Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story. An infamous China-backed hacking group adds a key U.S. agency to its list of victims in a major cyber breach. Verizon and AT&T confirm their networks were targeted by Chinese hackers, but add that they are now secure. Details on what customers were affected. To ban Chinese-made drones or not, the Commerce Department now weighing that decision over national security concerns. And Beijing sends dozens of fighter jets and warships toward Taiwan to ring in the new year, what the Taiwanese president says.
The stronger Taiwan is, the more solid the world's democratic defense line will be.
Another major cyber breach hits a key U.S. agency. The Treasury Department said earlier this week that Chinese state-sponsored hackers accessed employee workstations. NTD's Dana Monahan has more on what was stolen and how the theft was carried out.
Chinese hackers have struck again, this time targeting the Treasury Department. The department confirmed the breach in a letter to lawmakers, calling it a major incident. According to the report, hackers exploited vulnerabilities in a third-party software provider called Beyond Trust. By gaining access to a critical security key, the attackers remotely accessed certain Treasury workstations and stole unclassified documents. The breach occurred on December 8th, and the compromised service has since been taken offline. While the number of affected workstations and the type of stolen documents remain unclear, the Treasury insists there's no evidence the hackers still have access. The FBI and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency are investigating. This breach is the latest in a series of cyber attacks by China's state-backed Salt Typhoon hacking group. The group has been tied to wide-ranging espionage campaigns, including targeting telecom giants like Verizon and AT&T. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency has urged those in senior government or political positions to immediately stop using regular phone calls and text messages, and to assume such traditional mobile networks are compromised. The agency is advising them to use only end-to-end encrypted communications. The hacking group has already successfully targeted now Vice President-elect J.D. Vance and now President-elect Donald Trump, as well as Vice President Kamala Harris. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
AT&T and Verizon have confirmed their networks were targeted by China-backed hacking group Salt Typhoon. Both companies say the threats have been contained and their networks are now secure.
Verizon reported that only a small number of high-profile customers, including government officials, were affected. They worked with cybersecurity firms and federal agencies to secure their systems. AT&T stated that while a few cases of compromised data were identified, they have taken steps to protect customer information. Lumen Technologies, however, reported no evidence of a Chinese attack on their network. These statements come amid an ongoing investigation into widespread espionage campaigns targeting U.S. telecoms.
The Commerce Department says it may restrict or ban Chinese drones, citing national security threats.
Officials are concerned adversaries like China and Russia could manipulate drones to access sensitive data. China dominates the U.S. commercial drone market, with DJI selling over half of all drones. Last month, President Biden signed a law that could block DJI and Autel Robotics from launching new products in the U.S. Lawmakers and officials continue to scrutinize DJI over alleged ties to Beijing's military and potential surveillance risks.
Chinese-made drones are widely used by U.S. police forces. Chinese-made drones have even been used to protect U.S. political leaders. Authorities also warn that Chinese drones flying across America could collect data on U.S. military activity, railroads, ports, electric towers, bridges, and other infrastructure, and send those details back to China. New tariffs from Mexico are now in effect. The country's tax authorities said the goal is to strengthen oversight on goods flowing into the country from Asia. The agency added that some Chinese companies have been found using South America as a gateway, sending goods into American markets through Mexico while skirting U.S. tariffs.
The move could impact retailers like SHEIN and Temu. Items shipped via couriers from countries without trade agreements like Mexico, like China, face a 19% duty. Meanwhile, nations like The US and Canada will see a 17% duty on values over $50, but less than $117. A December 19th decree also raised tariffs on clothing and certain home goods to as much as 35%. The aim is to protect Mexican companies and jobs. Experts say the changes could disrupt a program in Mexico that allows tax-free imports for manufacturing.
A note on Chinese-owned online shopping platforms SHEIN and Temu. The companies sell clothes, home goods, and other goods, often at dirt cheap prices, that are shipped to the U.S. and other countries from China. The companies are at the center of several controversies and are accused of exploiting a loophole in the U.S. tax system to save millions of dollars on shipping costs. On top of that, Arkansas Attorney General Griffin sued Temu for its alleged data theft business. Griffin described Temu as, quote, malware and spyware. The Biden administration imposed sanctions on entities in Iran and Russia Tuesday, accusing them of attempting to interfere in the November election.
The entities include a subsidiary of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps and an organization affiliated with Russia's military intelligence agency. The Treasury Department said the entities aim to stoke socio-political tensions and influence voters during the 2024 election through disinformation campaigns. The two entities allegedly used generative AI tools and deepfakes, manipulated videos, and circulated disinformation about candidates. An annual U.S. threat assessment released in October said the U.S. sees a growing threat that China, Russia, and Iran attempted to influence the elections.
China kicking off the new year with new sanctions. A slew of U.S. defense companies hit by Chinese sanctions Thursday. On the list are Boeing's Defense, Space and Security Division, Lockheed Martin, and General Dynamics. They are among the 28 U.S. firms added to China's export control list, meaning China would block exports of dual-use items to these companies. Dual-use items are those that could serve both civilian and military purposes. In addition, China also sanctioned 10 U.S. firms over arms sales to Taiwan. Those 10 firms include subsidiaries of Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and General Dynamics. The sanctions ban these entities from making new investments in China. Their senior managers are also banned from entering China. Raytheon is one of America's largest defense companies. It previously said that it would be impossible to completely decouple from China. The company's CEO said it has several thousand suppliers inside China, noting it could de-risk but not decouple. He added he thinks that's the case for, quote, everybody. China sending over 20 fighter jets and warships near Taiwan Thursday. It follows a comment from the Taiwanese president expressing a willingness to talk to China. He made the remark after Chinese leader Xi Jinping again pledged to take control of Taiwan in his New Year's speech.
The Chinese Communist Party sees Taiwan as part of China despite never having ruled it. The U.S. does not have official diplomatic relations with Taiwan. However, Washington is bound by law to sell weapons to the island so that it can defend itself. Yesterday, Taiwan President William Lai also asked the island to be prepared for danger in times of peace. He urged residents to gather every bit of strength to improve the island's defenses.
At a New Year's Day news conference, Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te said Taiwan welcomes exchanges with China.
Taiwan hopes to have healthy and orderly exchanges with China under the principles of reciprocity and dignity.
At the same time, Lai noted he would continue to strengthen Taiwan's defenses and work together with other democracies.
The safer Taiwan is, the safer the world will be. The stronger Taiwan is, the more solid the world's democratic defense line will be. Democracies should unite to jointly resolve the Russia-Ukraine war and conflicts between Israel and Gaza and safeguard the security of Taiwan Strait and Indo-Pacific.
Across the Taiwan Strait, Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping said in his New Year's speech that no one can stop China's, quote, reunification with Taiwan. The Chinese regime uses the term reunification to reinforce Beijing's stance that Taiwan is part of China. That's despite the CCP never having ruled the island. Back to Xi Jinping's speech, he stated several times that he would take control of Taiwan through violence if necessary. The Chinese military sends ships and aircraft to patrol near the island on a near daily basis. Last year, it staged 2 rounds of war games near the island. More details from Taiwan. A survey reveals that more than half of Taiwan's population supports the island's independence, marking a nearly 5% increase compared to an earlier survey. The Taiwanese Public Opinion Foundation released the survey earlier this week. Nearly 52% responded that they want independence and to stay away from communist China. On the other side, 1 in every 8, or about 12%, support unification with China. That is, bringing Taiwan under the Chinese Communist Party's rule. 1 in 4 responded that they'd prefer to maintain the status quo, meaning that no side would try to take the other. The chair of the foundation noted that based on the survey, support for independence is the dominant opinion in Taiwan. He also criticized the government narrative of maintaining the status quo as a socially desirable option, calling it misleading. Coming up, concerns are rising that communist ideology is creeping onto American soil and into young minds. We spoke to Congressman Burgess Owens for details.
Communism, Marxism, all the things that take away our freedom.
And a U.S. mining company forced to delist after critical metals endure a price plunge. More on the collapse and what makes the metals so important. The World Health Organization again urging China to grant access to its COVID-19 data 5 years after the country detected the first cases of the virus. That and more after the break here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Are communist ideas creeping into young minds in America? NTD's Steve Lance spoke with Congressman Burgess Owens, co-sponsor of the crucial Communism Teaching Act, to find out more.
Congressman Burgess Owens, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Steve. Look forward to chatting with you for sure.
It's great to have you. Congressman, you are a co-sponsor of the crucial Communism Act. Talk to us about why this is important and what is actually in this bill.
Well, first of all, we have a very big passion on education. Ignorant free can never be was Thomas Jefferson. It's important that we know a little bit about our country, what it's all about, and what it actually we're fighting up against. Communism, Marxism, all the things that take away our freedom is what we have to become aware of. We're not, it'll sneak up on us, and it'll steal the essence of who we are. And that's what we've been seeing over the last few decades. So this is a bill by my good friend Maria that basically says, let's teach it. Let's teach what communism is. Let's not have 28% of our Gen Z thinking it's a cool thing when it goes against everything we stand for. The freedom of speech, the freedom of association, the freedom to dream. Everything that we're about is about how can we dream outside our limitations. Know there's a God in heaven that's going to help us to get there. That's what direction we want to go in. And know there's an ideology that hates everything we stand for. So the more we're aware of that, the more we're educated to what we stand for, number one, and what's against us, the better we can make sure this legacy of freedom could be passed to the next generation.
Congressman, talk to us about you mentioned the slow creep of communism and how some of the ideas may be appealing to young folks, but yet how detrimental they might be if they're put into practice.
We understand the way communists, with those who love to steal our freedom, work. They're cowards, number one. They're bullies. They're like little termites. They find the sweet spots, and those places are in education particularly, where our kids come in, they're open to advice and direction, and we have Marxists, we have communists that teach them everything against our country. So this comes down to very simply, the more we can teach our young people of what we stand for, what it is as we go through this process of being a more perfect union, the good, the bad, the ugly, and also realize that there's an ideology that hates everything we stand for, which is faith, family, the free market, and education. If you name those things that makes us a great country, that's exactly what communism, what Marxism, what the evil side of our nature it stands for.
What do you say to the idea that this could never happen to us when we look outside at China and Russia? I mean, after all, communism, Marxism is not an Asian idea. It came from Germany, as we know.
Well, that's the first step of losing it. Evil is out there and it's always coming at us. Now the key is how does it come after us? I grew up in a community that was very, very focused on the American dream. We led the country in growth of the middle class. This is the 30s to the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. Growth of middle class, men committed to marriage, business ownership, all those things that I grew up in. And when that ideology got into our community, it turned us upside down. So I know what it is to lose the opportunity of having hope. So yes, it is something that's coming at us all the time. It's one that comes from in areas that we don't expect it to, our educational situation. Countries that say they are friends, but they are putting in Confucius educational systems to take from us and to change our kids' thought process. So we have to always be diligent. Freedom is something we have to fight for every single day. We can never take that for granted. The minute we do is the minute we start slipping away and losing it.
Congressman, lastly, as an advocate for free markets and education yourself, huge advocate, how do you see communism as a threat to traditional American values?
First of all, we understand what the American values are. American values are faith, family, the free market, and education. What is communism? It hates faith, family, the free market, and education. In any place you see communism, you will not see those other four tenets I just talked about. So it's antithetical to everything we believe in. This country we stand for who we are. We're the light of the world, really. And we have to make sure we never let that light dim. So the more we understand our system and teach capitalism, teach the idea of faith, no matter how we might want to worship, teach that we can begin to have conversations, and we might not agree all the time, but if we're confident who we are and educated, we can debate and still be friends. And that's kind of what we stand for as a nation. The other side doesn't believe that, so we have to fight to make sure we hold on to what we have.
Congressman Owens, thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Next, U.S. mining companies are feeling the heat as cheap Chinese products flood the market. Treasury Global announced Thursday that the situation has forced the firm to delist and reorganize. The news comes after the prices of cobalt and nickel collapsed. Cobalt is a key mineral needed to make weapons and batteries for electric vehicles. Over the past 3 years, the price of the metal in the U.S. has tumbled more than 70%. A senior executive said the production of cobalt will likely stay halted unless the price doubles current levels. Last year, the company suspended construction of a cobalt mine. If completed, it would become America's only main source of the mineral on home soil. Nickel, another mineral the company harvests, saw its price drop by more than half for the past 2 years. The critical minerals trade has ramped up tension between the U.S. and China as the two countries trade export bans on semiconductors and key minerals. The World Health Organization once again urging China to share its COVID-19 data. 5 years ago, the country detected the first cases of the virus, which later spread around the world. China responded on Tuesday that it has nothing else to share, despite the WHO's repeated requests.
In its statement to China, the WHO said the request is to help scientists better understand the origins of the pandemic. The group argued that without transparency, sharing, and cooperation among countries, the world cannot adequately prevent and prepare for future pandemics. WHO records show that nearly 7 million people worldwide died due to the COVID-19 pandemic. China's CDC submitted the first report on the virus to the WHO at the end of 2019 and allowed a delegation from the UN body to enter the country 2 years later. But when the agency requested permission to conduct further research, China refused, saying the research of early cases could be conducted elsewhere. A House Select Committee on the pandemic concluded its 2-year investigation earlier this month, alleging the COVID-19 pandemic likely originated from a lab in Wuhan.
Next, let's turn to news from within China. A Chinese court announced decisions regarding 3 middle schoolers on Monday who were charged for murdering a classmate.
Local police found the body of a missing boy buried in a 2-foot deep hole in a garden. A police report says that the boy suffered brutal violence before death. The 3 teenagers plus the victim belong to a group known inside China as the Children Left Behind. The term refers to kids whose parents left them at home while they go and work elsewhere in order to financially support their families. They're known to live in conditions marked by poor education and nutrition. According to official statistics, crimes tied to them make up around 70% of China's juvenile crime rate. Last year's data says there are nearly 11 million children facing this situation in China. And back to the case, the court sentenced 1 teenager to life imprisonment and another one to 12 years in prison. It also ruled the third one free of criminal penalty, as the court found he was not directly involved in the crime.
Next, we turn to the Russia-Ukraine war. North Korean soldiers that were deployed to aid Russia are allegedly committing suicide to avoid capture. White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby says this is likely out of fear of reprisal against their families in North Korea. Here's that report.
The U.S. says North Korean soldiers fighting Ukrainian forces on Russia's behalf are committing suicide to avoid capture. That's according to White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby. He says they're doing so to avoid retaliation against their families back home. It's not clear how many North Korean troops have taken their own lives in the Russia-Ukraine war. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said several North Koreans were captured but died of their wounds, suggesting they may have been killed by their own people.
Their losses are significant, very significant. We see that neither the Russian military nor the North Korean overseers have any interest in ensuring the survival of these North Koreans. Everything is set up so that it is impossible for us to capture them. There are instances where they are executed by their own forces. Russians send them into assaults with minimal protection.
Zelensky said in a statement on Telegram Friday that at least 3,000 North Korean soldiers have been injured or killed in the Kursk region. John Kirby said 1,000 have been killed in the past week. The U.S. and its allies estimate North Korea deployed some 11,000 troops to aid Russia in Europe. Kirby says Russia is deploying human waves of Korean soldiers with little protection.
Today, reports came in regarding a few North Korean soldiers. Our troops managed to take them captive, but they were severely wounded, and it was not possible to save their lives. This is one example of the madness that dictatorships are capable of.
Zelensky also said the Korean people should not lose their lives in battles in Europe.
This is something that Korea's neighbors, including China, can influence. If China is sincere in its statements that the war should not expand, then it needs to exert appropriate pressure on Pyongyang.
Russian forces have been taking noticeable losses as well. The British Ministry of Defense says November was the most costly month of the war for the Kremlin, estimating about 45,000 casualties. This peak of Russian losses comes as President-elect Donald Trump prepares to re-enter the White House. He has vowed on the campaign trail to end the war in Ukraine on day one and has said he wants peace in the region.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For on-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.